Welcome to Palenque Norte here at Camp Soft Landing. This is the Psychedelic Speaker Series, and we are absolutely elated to have you here. So today we are welcoming Mareesa. Mareesa is a passionate storyteller who's dedicated her life to unraveling the power of narrative. So we're going to be talking about decoding storytelling through psychedelics. Mareesa, thank you.
Hi, everyone. If you're actually here for a workshop and you want to partake, raise your hand. And it's okay if you don't. Oh, cool. Okay. You guys want to come a little closer? You know, I was not going to use the mic, but Kat pointed out that when there's a mic going, other people hear it from the outside and then they get called in. So, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and nurture that curiosity. But like, come even closer. I'd like to make this a little interactive and like, let's get friendly. Get yourself nice and cozy. It feels really silly using this microphone, but I'm also kind of glad because my voice is a little shot. Do you guys mind coming even closer? It might make it even sillier that I have a mic. We'll see.
I love the power of the microphone, though.
Right?
But I mean, it's just me. I'm like,
No, I do. I really enjoy it too. And actually, I think I'm going to pass it around because we have such a small group. We can actually like get to know each other a little bit and become friends a little and share our stories some. I'll start. My name's Mareesa. I like stories. I'm a filmmaker, and I'm very passionate about creating new conversations around healing, or around finding our fullest potential, and how psychedelics help us in this process. And so I have a series on Gaia TV where I've documented myself working with psychedelics. It's kind of like Anthony Bourdainin, the psychedelic, what it looks like to go into ceremony and work on mental health issues. And I work as a steward of the Global Psychedelic Society, so I'm really passionate about creating spaces for people to get together and talk about drugs and learn them together and, learn from each other. So, why don't we just take a turn? Everyone give like a 1 minute little intro and share who you are and what brings you here, why you're interested in story or psychedelics or all the above. Keep it around a minute.
So, hello, my name is Vanessa, and I'm from Mexico, and it's my first burn. I live in Las Vegas, and mainly in Mexico we have all these plant medicines and stuff. So I microdosed 2 years ago. I started creating my own mushrooms drops. So it's the only thing that I have tried so far, and it's been a healing journey for me to be a best mom. So I'm here, thank God.
yay, welcome.
Hi, I'm Buffalo. It's my 11th burn, and stories. I love to write stories that kind of weave in psychedelics and different things, and just weird, crazy, spiritual, and whatever. I live in Lake Tahoe, and I spend a lot of time in Hawaii. I'm working with plant medicines there, and doing ceremonies and that kind of thing. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Welcome. Your name again?
Buffalo.
Buffalo. Vanessa. Buffalo.
Hi, I'm Christina. I'm in this space, this psychedelic space, but I got to do kind of the journeys that to do the support, like the post-integration things.
You do the post-integration. Cool.
Yeah, so I like that side of it, but I always love to hear what people are doing and to learn from them, so that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Misha. I live in New York. This is my 9th or 8th burn with this year's Swing City. And I came here because my friend over here, Christina, was saying, "Oh, I'm gonna go check out this talk about psychedelics." And I'm probably the only one in out of my 2 siblings that went to Burning Man and does a range of psychedelics and the difference between always like night and day. Yes, it's helped me on my journey.
Thank you.
I am Teresa, and actually I came in to take a nap, but then when I heard what you
we were gonna do, and I decided to stay. It's my first burn man. I'm very new into the psychedelic world, but I have come from a career that has a lot of PTSD and things like that.
May I ask
And
what?
then fire department, and then and so I've done just a handful of journeys, but it's been extremely beneficial, and I support that way more than I do pharmaceuticals. Just the psychedelic kind of mentality that people fall into. I'm a mom, and I'm a 2-year-old daughter, and so I want to understand what her world is like too, because she dips into it, and I totally support it because I think it's really out there. It's the alternatives out there, and I love a good story. So I just thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amy. I came a little late, but I think I understand
Perfect
what I was
timing.
talking about. I'm from Chicago, and I heard you speak there.
Oh, in Chicago.
In Chicago, and you were very inspiring. I'm pretty sure.
It's in Chicago. I've been there. But I don't think I've done a workshop.
I'm trying to think of where, and it may have been, I don't know, that may have been like a podcast or something. I just know it was
Oh, I did something online with the psychedelic.
Illinois Psychedelic
Yes.
Society.
Yes.
So that was the connection. Yes. So I'm very involved in
Gene.
that. Yes. And the space. I'm also an art therapist and psychedelic assisted therapy. And my work, especially as an art therapist, has so much to do with story, visualization. And as I said, you were so inspiring. I was just going back and I saw your I'm so excited to I'm so excited.
Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thanks for sharing.
Hi everyone, my name is Kat, and I'm from Hawaii, so maybe we have to cross paths at some point. Yeah, really honored to be able to work with psychedelics in the way that we can have access to. And I joke that I like to swim in the deep end of consciousness. And one thing that I always think is interesting is how we connect the dots with language and our experience. So I was deeply interested in hearing our friend talk today and better understanding how we can use the power of words to help us not only unlock our own experience, but to find connection with others through language and the tools available to us. And that's why I'm so excited to hear you talk.
Thank you.
Hello, newcomers. We just went around and shared 1 minute of who we are and what brings us into a space where we're talking about psychedelics and story. Would you like to share your 1 minute intro?
Hello, I'm Iski. I'm a more compassionate and patient person because of psychedelics. I find them very therapeutic for my autism and my ADHD, and I really love to spread the good word and pay it forward. And it's really hard to put into words the way that it is talking about dance when I've had a transcendent experience of partner dancing, which I teach and spend my whole week doing all the time. And I'm real interested in hearing how others do that and skill sharing.
Hi, I'm Play-Doh. I grew up in a very religious family. My first experience with psychedelics was 7 years ago at 65 years old, and it literally changed my life, and so I'm so thankful. I'm disappointed it took so long to realize what kind of an impact it can have, but I'm very thankful that I finally found psychedelics.
Thank you. Sounds like you have a story to tell that a lot of people could benefit from. Beautiful. There's so many gorgeous connections, and I feel like some people have answers, some people have questions, so I really hope to encourage that. And normally I get everyone talking with each other, but we have an hour, and I'd love to take you on a little ride. So perhaps we'll save that for the end, but I really want to plant that seed that you find someone at the end of this who said something, and say something to them, because this is how I like to say with the psychedelic movement, let us be mycelial AF, mycelial as fuck, and that's how that's how this thing grows, right? And we just need to do it by connecting with each other more and more and more. Ooh, you know what? I'm going to do a small plug. I actually created an art project. This is my first year. The reason why I came in here stressed and late is because it's my first year bringing an art thing to bring in, and it's called the Talk Box, and it's in Centric Camp, and I was setting it up, and I had some big things kind of go off track. We're good, but it's a space for strangers to meet each other and have conversations about deep things. So it looks kind of like a confession booth and a voting booth had a baby. But the idea is that we're all surrounded by so much magic and so much potential, but we rarely get past the surface level. And so my invitation when you talk to the person here today is to go, let's something deep. Share something that came up for you in today's workshop. Okay, so psychedelics and story is the name of this workshop. Actually, Decode Your Life Narrative is what we're doing. And so I've been working with stories for a very long time, and there's some frameworks that I'm sure some of you are familiar with, the hero's journey, also some of Carl Jung's work, and I found that when you put them together in a specific way, it's a formula for life, like literally. And it's a really fun thing to play with because it makes sense of the abysses, it makes sense of when we're looping, like the abyss, for those who are not familiar, dark night of the soul, the illness, addiction, depression, heartbreak, all the things that run us into the ground. This framework that we're going to work with today makes sense of it, and also the looping makes sense of it, and I think it becomes very helpful when I spent a lot of years also with some religious upbringing and some very less than ideal operating systems and programs in my own head, and a lot of like little t trauma, and I didn't know how to unpack it, and I was always looking for a map. So today we're going to play with that map. Everything I do is under the moniker of your story is everything. Think of how much story is, right? Everything we do is because of story. Civilizations are born and they fall because of stories. Wars are waged, religious books, spiritual books, all the things are because of stories. And yet when it comes to us as humans, we often don't really take the time to figure out, what is my story? Who am I? What am I here on this planet to do? There's sort of this like, oh, I'm just getting through whatever happens, but when we take the time to unpack, that can become also your own personal map, and it's quite magical when you really commit to that and commit to being the hero of your story. I normally have slides, I'm sorry, actually, it's too hard. So, I shared already about myself, but yeah, the map thing. Okay, so when it comes to story, where do we start? I like to think of the starry sky. There's a million stars. There's all something interesting. How do you even start? Which those starry sky? Those stars are like our life experiences. We have countless experiences, and you want to tell your story. Where do you even start? Which parts are interesting? Which parts are not? What I found, what makes for the most meaningful stories, is stories about transformation and change. Right? Where has there been a big change in your life? That's the first anchor point. If you're ever wanting to tell a story, look for that. The only constant in life is change, according to Heraclitus. And the best quote I've ever found that I can't say enough is Carl Jung's, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Who here is very familiar with that quote?
Say it again.
Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So another way to look at that is until you become aware of all the programming and the conditioning of your environment, of your caregivers, of your religion, of your society, your culture, family, until you are conscious of what all that is, it runs you. And you're like a computer program, blindly following orders. And so until you become conscious of what that programming is, you are not a free agent. You are ran by that show. So it runs your life. So until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And so I've taken that, I've made it into a little acronym I call MUCK, making unconscious conscious. That's what we're all doing. That's also some of the best stories, is where you see a hero, which is gender neutral, making that transition from not aware of some blind spot that they have. They make their way into a dark night of the soul. Almost all is lost, and they have some sort of breakthrough, some sort of revelation, and then they make their way through on the other side with a newer understanding of that unconscious material. Another way to say this is two fish in the water. One fish says to the other, how's the water? And the other fish says, what's water? The other fish has been in the water its whole life, has no idea that water's a thing, right? So this is the process of being human and of evolving. And it's quite universal. And when it comes to psychedelics, where this all connects, psychedelics, according to Stanislav Grof, psychedelics are to the mind what the microscope is to biology and the telescope is to astronomy. So psychedelics help us better understand our mind. They help us understand our unconscious material in a really, really beautiful way. There's actually some fun studies, we're gonna go into it in a minute, but I'll speak first about Joseph Campbell. So Joseph Campbell, famous scholar, beloved scholar, he traveled the world in the 50s, 60s, and more, and took stock of the world's myths. He looked at the spiritual beliefs and frameworks from cave humans to all the way to pop culture, Shakespeare, plays, music, everything. And he found that if there's a story, it often had the monomyth within it. Monomyth, another word for that, is the hero's journey. So I will share this. You know, I brought to Burning Man a big whiteboard so I could draw this for you all, because I knew we didn't have a slideshow, but I'll just share it here. So, can you guys see it? So this is the hero's journey. There's a lot of information here, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because we're going to go into a more simplified version in a minute. But the things you want to know are the hero begins his journey in the known world, living where it's unaware of what's unconscious, and it's like this is life is normal, right? And then there's a call to adventure that sort of nudges our hero into the unknown world, where a series of challenges and temptations and struggles happen. And these build and they build and they build until they run you into the abyss, which is that place, the dark night of the soul, the illness, the breakdown, the breakups, the depression, etc., etc. All feels lost here. But there's also a place of revelation. And it's from that revelation that our hero begins to transform, and they begin to make their way out of the circle, integrating what they've learned here, and making their way back into the known world. And let's see. When you strip this to its most core version, and you look at it through Carl Jung's work, again, the process of muck. Another way to put it, he has a term called individuation. And this idea that we are all cooked in the collective, we all, we learn who we are in the collective, and then the process of individuation is separating yourself from that collective and figuring out who are you outside of the collective's belief systems. What do you want for yourself when you're not living according to external validation and looking to please everyone around you and doing what they say you should do so that you fit in and so that you're safe with the tribe, right? So when you combine the hero's journey and the process of individuation, you've got this hero's journey of individuation. We're all just mucking about. We begin here, programmed by the collective. You get into some sort of struggle with, some sort of conflict with that programming. So if it's like, maybe your caregivers, your parents didn't treat you that well when you were a kid. Maybe they were hypercritical, very impatient with you, and that was just how it was. And so the meaning you make is, oh, I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me, and then you have this belief, and then you live your life, and you keep getting into conflict with others where you're just like feeling that pain of I'm not good enough, and it builds and builds, and sometimes a really good example is relationships, especially if you know the anxious attachment style. Where I have a history of most of my life I was very anxious, and I would always chase men who were emotionally unavailable. And I was like, I'm not dating my dad, because my dad was also had a really bad temper and was quite stressful to be around. I thought I was avoiding that completely, but I didn't understand that he was unemotionally available, and that I was really finding that and recreating that dynamic over and over and over again. And so that felt like looping. At some point, one of those relationships ran me into the ground so deeply that I fell into like a deep depression for a year. I was devastated. And it was from there that I started to learn how to treat myself better. And that began a very big healing journey for me. So again, that lens of like not good enough and recreating that is how that looks here. And then you become a little bit conscious of it, that's what you're running, and some transformation begins, and you begin to integrate and bring yourself back to the known world. Does that sound familiar to any of you? Have any of you experienced some of the looping and the recreating of the same dynamic? Okay, cool. There's studies on this. It's really exciting. The science, let's see, tens of thousands of participants have been interviewed, and they report that they have an increased sense of meaning of life when they look at life through the lens of the hero's journey. What's really exciting is that Calvin Carhart Harris and the Airwoods did a study, and they showed that the mushroom journey mimics the hero's journey. And I see some nodding heads. Yeah, like mushrooms will take you into the hardest part of whatever's going on in your life, kind of then rub your face into it a little bit. It feels quite devastating often, and then you learn something that you couldn't maybe see before, and there's a little bit of a revelation, a little bit of a ha-ha, and you begin to transform, and then that begins to, if you choose to integrate it, and not chase the next exciting psychedelic journey, you're following the hero's journey there. And then also there's a field of science coming out, it's called heroism science, that just is very exciting because it's being found in biology. The organism, it has a certain set of coping strategies, and it's about to die. And then suddenly it has some new innovative approach to wrench itself out of this death spiral, and it makes its way back up. So we're seeing it everywhere. It's very exciting. It excites me a lot. Formula for life. And why is it so universal? So there's a part of our brain called the reticular activating system. It's a bundle of nerves in the stem of our brain, and it's also responsible for our confirmation bias. So when we are we have a story, I'm not good enough, and we find ourselves recreating it over and over and over again. It's your mind actually looking out to protect you, because as a child, the I'm not good enough was very unsafe, and you were very, very worried about it. And so your brain has trained itself to be on hyper alert to protect you from feeling that way again. And so what we are seeking to find evidence of, we find, because we're just looking for that. And so we actually recreate the dynamic until we become conscious of it. And then Freud called this repetition compulsion. There's just, why are we repeating the same shit over and over again? I want to make the argument that our consciousness is actually doing that to help us become aware of it. If we didn't repeat it over and over again, we would just live with that operating mechanism, I'm not good enough, for the rest of our lives. And so it's actually by repeating it over and over and hitting that abyss, the abyss being a very natural, healthy response to a shitty program that taught you weren't good enough in the first place. We wouldn't ever change. So there you have it. The hero's journey of individuation, we're all just mucking about. And what I'll say about this, as you play with this model, is that it's a messy model. The hero's journey is not like, yes, sometimes you might be able to do it around your whole life. I learned about hero's journey when I was like 21, and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. No way. I couldn't see it. In hindsight, obviously I was very much in the challenges part of it and then made my way through. But I do think you can still make it through if I had a better teacher. So I'm going to invite you all. Am I taking the wrong way? This is a journey map. Yeah. Okay. So we already talked about that. But what I'll say is that there's some fun ways to talk about how to prepare yourself to work with this ahead of time, before your journey, and also some fun ways to talk about integration, and we'll go back to that in a minute. But at first I want to invite you guys to get a little interactive. And so I have some cards, and I have some pens, and we're gonna pass them around, and I'm gonna walk you through a super, super simple 3-step process that will help you unpack a story today. And it can be it could be a story of a psychedelic experience you've had. It could be the story of a psychedelic experience you want to have. And then we're going to share them with each other. Because how fun is it when you get to meet strangers, as we said at the beginning of this. So, would you mind passing that around? And I will just set this little framework up for you. All right, so this 3-step process, and this is not just for your own psychedelic story, but also just stories in general. If you're ever like, I want to tell a good story, what parts do I start? How do I make it interesting? I mean, I invite you to think about this hero's journey, but this little framework will make it even easier. Something big happened, right? We talked about this earlier, some sort of transformation. Something big happened. What was the catalyst for the transformation? It could be something as simple as one mushroom journey, one microdosing journey. It could be the time I walked into the kitchen and I dropped the porcelain bowl on the floor and I realized my life was a fucking mess, right? And the question is, what was that big thing that happened that changed you? Who were you before? And how did it change you? How did it, what sort of shifts did it make? It's basically a before and after story. And I'm gonna prompt you guys to like make notes in a moment, but I'm just gonna give you a little sample story. About 8 years ago, I was kind of new on my rewiring process of becoming conscious of all my childhood traumas, and I found people who were doing journey work, and this was in Los Angeles. A bunch of people would get together. I didn't know most of them, but after a year or so, I knew a few, and made some friends, and some of them, they were like, Mareesa, you're kind of negative. You kind of complain a lot. And I was like, oh, this isn't kind of, okay, what do I do? And they're like, positive, think positive. What are you grateful for? What do you want to like magnetize into your life more? And so, I got into this whole positive affirmation thing of like, oh, there's a negative thought. Okay, no negative thoughts, just love. And what's interesting, I was freelance filmmaking, and that was kind of drying. Like my work life was drying up. There wasn't a lot of money coming in. Relationships simultaneously were also drying up. And I was in this like crunchy spot in life and not really knowing how to handle it very well. So I go into the journey, I take some MDMA, and I have this first jubilant experience that quickly fades into this really heaviness in this big heaviness into my heart. And my heart is sinking and sinking, and it's hurting so bad. And luckily there's an elder who's a friend who's like, oh, come here, let me help you. She goes, I want you to do something totally counterintuitive. I want you to be very present with your feelings. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I want you to feel your feelings. Like, I'm like, well, I'm lonely and I'm sad and I'm angry. She's like, well, no, I want you to like, what does it feel like in your body? I'm like, oh, well, there's pressure and it's tender and it's heavy and it sinks and it hurts. She's like, okay, good. Now, bring your attention to that and feel that as much as possible. Just love it, like a little girl who's never gotten that love, like hold it. And so I did. And I did over hours and hours, like it felt like hours. But I started to cough and I started to cry and I started to like really be able to move it. I saw these like black thorny thistly flowers emerging from my heart. And I started to feel better and lighter. And of course I didn't know what all this meant. I was very excited. I'm like, okay, cool, I'm healed, right? No, I wasn't healed. And of course after a few days, I'm feeling back to normal and hard feelings are coming. But what's happening now is I have a tool that instead of like this positive affirmation where I was like, no, I'm positive, and of course that wasn't true, that wasn't authentic. I now have an authentic way to be with my feelings and to process them, to hold them like the child that didn't get the care as a little girl around her emotions. My parents were awesome in a lot of ways, they just didn't really know how to do that part of it. So I share this as an example of the 3-step framework that I'm going to invite you to do. So the something that happened was the big journey. Ooh, you know what? I forgot one part of the story. At the end of the story, life also began to open up. More work began to come, and relationships started to come because I was not so rigid anymore. I was now open and flowing and allowing things to move through me. So the before was life was stuck, and I was rigid. I was trying to overly control, and I wasn't really present. Something happened was the journey, where I was taught how to move my feelings. And what happened afterwards is I started to move my feelings, which made me more available in the present moment. And life began to shift and life began to open up more. So this is what you're gonna play with. Again, I don't know if it would help for me. I don't think we need to do it. I would like for you all to think deeply on something that happened that changed you. And we're gonna also look at some transformations before you spend too much time. You could go from being closed off to open, disassociated to embodied, I can't read upside down, controlling to flexible, hypervigilant to relaxed, illness to health. You might want to make notes on your cards. If any of these are resonating, these are fun frameworks to work with for this little story exercise. Ruminating to presence, fearful to trusting, scarcity to abundance, oppression to freedom. A few more. Hiding the visible, controlling my body to worshiping my body, centered to uncentered, codependent to authentic autonomy, feeling excluded to belonging, shame to healthy pride, safety and comfort to embracing the struggle of transformation. Silent to honest, external validation to wholeness. So I can put these here, you can look at them, and I invite you to take the next couple minutes and journal some transformations. And if you know what the big thing is that caused the transformation, feel free to add that to it as well. Yeah.
They're on the other side.
Other. If anyone has questions, feel free to. So something big happened. Who were you before? And how did you change? Who were you after? Is that a broken one?
So to be a positive change.
No. See what happens. Sometimes you know what I would say is, if it's not a positive change, it might be the part of you still making your way into the abyss. And so, like, for those of you who are telling a story where you're still in the struggling part, think of that hero's journey and envision where you want to go in the struggle. And you can create your fictional ending. This is actually part of the work of how you can apply this to journey. Does that make sense? Yeah? Let's try. All right, giving yourself one more minute. friends, wrapping that up, I would love, well, first of all, how was that for you? Any questions? Thoughts, concerns? Anything new come up for you that was interesting? You want to talk about yours? Do you want to have a microphone?
So when I went in college, my senior year, my brother accidentally fired my college computer with all my thesis papers a week prior to graduation, and he accidentally put my laptop on like a leather couch, and the cooling element didn't cool off. The cooling element didn't cool off the hard driver, and it fried. So I unofficially withdrew a week before graduation. So I was studying globalization and how to be an agent for that sort of system. But I didn't believe in the narration and the globalization tries to like enforce or train everybody in this sort of like legal and law enforcement sort of side. But after that, I started selling drugs and running programs because I believe that the powers that be are much more powerful than the change I want to create.
Thank you. Yeah. I think when it comes to mapping this out on the hero's journey, you're it sounds like you're still in a part of it where you're in the challenges / abyss. I sometimes like to say we're like oftentimes we spend time with one foot in the challenge, one foot in the abyss, one foot on the transformation, and it's like how do we get to a place where we feel empowered is the work, I think, in all stories, where we feel like we're not being ran by the systems around us. And so making a map that you are following as you journey, as you live your life, and you say, I want to go here. Like when you're in the hard part, it's nice to go, let yourself dream. What is the place you want to get to? What does it feel like in your body? What would it look like tangibly? And just put it down on paper. If you don't have a destination, if you're traveling and you don't have a destination, you're gonna end up anywhere, right? But this idea is create where you wanna go and hold that in your mind's eye. You don't have to do much around it, but just get clear on that and see if the pieces connect. I'll say when I had a lot of trauma, I had somebody who was like, you need to make when I was still living in all the old programming, you need to make a vision board and you need to write down what you want. And I actually did that, and it was actually really helpful. I felt very, I was a failing filmmaker who had never made anything that felt of any purpose. And I put a vision board with a picture of the earth and a Band-Aid on it and me and a dude with cameras. And 2 years later, I was filming a series where I was traveling around the world and making films about healing with psychedelics with a dude. It was really amazing. And I don't even know how I did that because I had none of the resume, none of the real hard skills to do that. But because I let myself dream, what do I want to do? I put it down and it happened. So I think that's the trick with where you're at. How's that sit? We'll talk a little more later. Okay. Do we have anyone else who's a share? Yeah.
And then I'm going to partner you all up.
Thanks. I was going to tell you about the first time I did ayahuasca. I had ended my marriage and had 2 kids, and I was kind of pretty confused and stuff. But in the next year, I did so many things. I came to Burning Man and did ayahuasca. Okay, yeah. But anyway, the first time I did it, I was I'm experienced with psychedelics, all different kinds, but it was beyond anything else I'd ever done. It just took me into the darkest place, and I was like on the ground, just like writhing around, like it felt like I was in a pit of black snakes, and it was really scary. I was just like, what the hell did I do? And then somehow it shifted, and all of a sudden I lost sense of all of my identity. Like I was completely like, who am I? What am I? Like I didn't even know if I was a human, you know. And I just floated in that, and it wasn't that scary. It was just sort of like, wow. I was just like in wonder, kind of. And then I slowly watched my ego reform, just like, oh, you were a human. Your name was Kyle. You're this, and you're a parent, and all this stuff just slowly reformed. And it was just like I was really fascinated by that. And since then, I've done other things like 5-MeO-DMT that allowed me to watch my ego dissolve and come back. And I've kind of learned that it's not like an adversary. You can be friends with your ego, but you can transcend it. You know, it's like it's porous. If it's starting to run your life too much, you can see from outside, like, oh, that's just my ego trying to tell me that this or that. But you can make changes from that.
So in the beginning, your ego was sort of running the show, and you were feeling at odds with it, and then at the end,
right,
you got to friend it a little more. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, beautiful. Thanks for sharing, guys. I would love for you to all look around at each other and find somebody. I don't think anybody here, not too many of you know each other, so find somebody you don't know and pair up. And you're gonna just take 2 minutes and share your story, and then give a moment for reflections, and then the other person will share their story. So just make sure to let one person talk fully for the first 2 minutes. Maybe I'll give you guys 3. All right, so yeah, look around, find somebody you don't know. You two should meet each other, Shelly and Sylvia. Oh.
We'll meet each other.
Talk to me because all right.
Yeah, share what you were saying.
Oh, yeah.
Where I was like, let's talk about it afterwards. So you were saying, like I was asking if you feel like you're in your story.
I am, yes.
You know, like
That made me decide that I wanted to divorce. That's why now you say divorce, I was like, I have to talk to somebody. So I took that decision. He's
Looks like everybody's still sharing, so we'll give another minute or so.
So next to my microphone, have you ever done
It's like,
and now it's what
I really, I felt,
I want to do it
because life, like, something happens and it should never happen. And like, how is this here to help us? You look at like, that's great. So, right, and then you grow, exactly. That's good. Yeah. You know, and it's like, you can tell a story where it's like, and where you just landed in a shittier place, but it doesn't feel satisfying.
That's why I'm like, maybe I'm ready, and I feel like I was looking for space in a ceremonial kind of way, not only recreation.
Yeah, that's one of my fascinations.
All right, time for reflection. If you haven't given it.
Recreation.
How's everybody doing? Do you still need more time? Those who need more time, raise your hand. Okay. We got a couple more. Okay, we'll give it another minute here.
And what about the consider that we had people's life, understand what was going on, feel like
Process. We had kids. We just kind of
All right, if you haven't yet switched, please switch. Please switch with the other person.
They just started calling me Bubba.
Calling you. Now you're Bubba.
Yeah.
And you've been married a lot on which number of birds?
My 11. Like, you have to.
And my divorce last year, so I have a lot of so you have a lot of experience of this. Right.
Yeah, I see.
Yes, I believe that.
Tonight I'm really busy.
Okay, because I'm leaving on Sunday morning. Tomorrow you know that Alex is going to be there. So if I see you here,
Yeah, and also Thursday. How about come back here on Thursday, 3:30? There's some other tea. Rap good. It's all about psychedelics.
okay, and where is it going to be?
Just be here.
Here tomorrow 3:30.
Thursday. I think my days to sleep too.
Me too. You know, I was told today it was Thursday, but no.
Today's
Or today it was, and I want to go and our, you know, this Aubrey Marcus. He's the guy that has a podcast also kind of like psychedelic stuff, and he's having a talk later on. So I want to go that. So it works perfect for tomorrow, and then I'll stay for the experience.
yeah. Alex Gray is
It's at 7 tomorrow.
7 tomorrow. Okay, yeah. No, 3:30.
3:30 a.m. here. I'll come and see that, and then I'll say.
And yeah, the southern food that's better. I'll tell you what it's like. So I have a trial.
I had to walk it, like I had to like get to the finish line because the road like has to cross the line and it's not a big deal, it's fixed now, handlebars probably.
But, you know, the way that I administrate it now, but here it's great. So I'm going to tell you, we need to tell you the rest about so what I did is I computed that.
Alright, starting to wrap that up.
So each time you squirt,
So I will not be lasting time for 10 hours.
no, you'll just be a little bit more sparkly eyes, aware, and this is what I like to do.
So, let us reconvene.
That's for low noise.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah, so if you did one squirt, you just had it.
No, I work in the post office. Well, I
Oh.
volunteer.
How did that go?
He was so bad.
Would you like to share?
His eyes were like gone. He was gone. And I told him,
I love to share.
I'm back with my circle friends.
I ended up
When you're ready,
5 minutes.
I'll give it
Because
a
I
minute
know
to
I'm so bad.
come back, rejoin the group,
Okay. So 3:30
my
tomorrow.
friends, my family on Playa. Yeah, so with the invitation to share, that was a really powerful experience. Not only being able to listen to my friend and reflect back their experience, to hold space for that was powerful, and also to name my own experience. I don't know that I really gave weight to the hero's journey that I had experienced and how impactful it was. So just a quick synopsis, I have 2 children, they're the loves of my life. In their early years, I was replaying a pattern that I'd experienced as a child, which was absentee parenting, working too much, checking out, and when they were about ages 3 and 4, I had a death meditation. I experienced what felt like my own death, which was replaying my entire life in front of my eyes. And it was immensely painful because I could see how I wasn't present and how that was going to play out for these 2 beautiful humans, and what it would be like to have a mother that was there in body but not there in mind. And the pain of that was absolutely excruciating. So in that moment, I made a change. And I said, no, this will not be the life I give these humans. I cut back my hours at work. I moved fully remote. I pack their lunches every day with a little love note. They're ages 12 and 13 now, and I am the best mother. I am such a fucking good mom. Without sacrificing, because here I am at Burn, right? And what a powerful experience that was, to sit in the pain of my own guilt, but also the grace of knowing that I was repeating a pattern that was handed to me, and to take the choice to shift that pattern into something else, to shift it into beauty, and to love and forgiveness for where I learned it, for the version of me that was replaying it. So, very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, beautiful. So, a reason why I'm such a fan of storytelling is because I believe we all hold wisdom. We have all learned things. And when we share them, we are helping others see paths forward. Help others see possibilities. When you share your story, I hear both my little girl self, and there's so many clicks that happen. And this is a big reason why I'm like, people, share your stories of the hard stuff. Your story is a permission slip for someone else, and it's a map for them to find a way forward. And what I find is a lot of people who've made their way through trauma and hard stuff, they're like, oh my God, thank God that's over. I never want to talk about that again. And they don't talk about it. What happens is we have this massive information gap where people who've gone through, cool, they don't talk about it. The people who are still stuck don't have stories to model after to go, oh, that's possible. And it wasn't until I found people intentionally using psychedelics that I was able to make my way through it. So, anyone else have a story? I think we have time for maybe one more. I got a couple of, I know we have some really juicy pieces here. Who will go to bed tonight and be like, fuck, why didn't I tell them that story to a room of strangers? Okay.
Okay, thank you, and for this space and the opportunity to share our stories. That was really meaningful. My story begins as an adult, and, well, really no more as a child, not really feeling loved by my mom, but really adored by my father. And she was wonderful, like we had a good relationship, but it felt more like a working relationship. And I learned a lot from her, but really felt just not really loved. And fast forward, my mom is 94, and a couple of years ago, I was sitting with her, and we were talking, and she just, out of the blue, just randomly said, you know, I never really wanted you. And it was one of those moments where you just, it was so fascinating, because in a moment I wanted to cry because it was so hurtful, and at the same time, it was just like so much gratitude, like, thank you. I have been feeling that my whole life and didn't intuitively know how to understand that. And then it just brought about stories like, well, tell me more, because it connected to me as opposed to like ruin me in that moment. I think just because of so much time had passed, I wasn't a child. And so she went on to tell me how my dad really wanted another child. She was happy with the other two and just did it for him. And through psychedelics, I was able to really go back to infanthood and recreate being held and loved and adored. And I saw myself just not being cared for, like being, crying and alone and not loved and held as an infant. So being able to use psychedelics to really immerse myself in being loved and adored and held and all the things that should have been done. And it was also like myself as an adult holding me and rocking me and caring for me in the way that I should have been. So it was so healing, and it's really healed my relationship with her, and also my need to be loved by everybody, you know, craving love in all the wrong places. And as a consequence, which, you know, again, unbeknownst to me, I overloved all of I have 4 kids, like, they are very loved. And they will be the first to tell you how much they have felt loved their whole life because you just do what you didn't have. Right? So it was a really great experience.
This is what happens when we share our authentic, vulnerable stories. That like just cracks your heart open, and it feels really juicy and sweet. And also, like, you paint a picture and you validate the pain of a parent who wasn't there emotionally. And I think also this is so valuable because a lot of people are like, I didn't have big trauma. Like, nothing big happened to me. I was fine. My parents loved me. But this wound is so deep, and if we don't name it more often, like, a lot of people go, it's fine, and then they never look at their trauma, and then they operate the old programming, right, and carry it forth to their children. So, thank you. All right, with that being said, we are coming to a close. My invitation to you all, we did get to talk to each other, but hopefully you have a story that you can also share with someone out there in the world, somebody you know, maybe somebody on Playa as well, but somebody in your own default world. As an invitation for them to carry it forward, and just let's tell more stories and share ourselves authentically. If you want to follow me, I do stuff on Instagram, and I have a website, Your Story Is Everything. Actually, if you want to put your email in my phone, that would be cool. I can pass it around. And I'll be here for questions. And I appreciate you all so much. Thank you for coming.
No, not that you're a thing. No, but yeah, I love writing stories. Like, I write crazy stories. Not many people, but I love sharing with you. It's the funny thing, like when I left, I got a free ticket and came